to the Skills Podcast. I'm Meredith Meyer, licensed marriage and family therapist, DBT Linehan Board of Certification certified clinician, and your co-host of this lovely podcast. I'm so excited to jump back into today's content with you all. Last week, Faith and I introduced the first DBT skill, which is mindfulness. And where we start with that is describing kind of two skills or tools to work with. And those are the 3 states of mind. So identifying which state of mind you may be in, like what are your cues and which state of mind you might be in at any given moment. And then the concept of binding, getting familiar with, and then being able to lead with our wise mind. So 2 different skills, both with the aim of working towards this wise mind, more activity, so to speak. So today we're continuing on the theme of mindfulness, and we're going to introduce 2 new skills called the what and how skills. So the what skills, I like to think of them as like what we do to get into mindfulness or to come into the present moment. And we say that we do these skills in order and one at a time. So the skills are observing, then we describe, and then we participate. And that order will make more sense as we talk through it more. But just even naming that right now, we have to first become aware of what's happening in the present moment, observe it, not judgmentally, put words on it, to then figure out how we want to be with it. What are we going to do with it? And then for the how skills, there's no order. You can do these at any given moment, anytime throughout the day. So they're lovely to pull on at any moment to help us find a non-judgmental stance and again, reorient us to being mindful of the present moment. So that all being said, we're going to jump right back into the conversation. And you'll hear me reference a worksheet that we have shown on the screen. So if you're watching this on a video platform, then you'll be able to see this worksheet. And then for those of you who don't have the worksheet, I will speak to it as we go along. So hopefully you don't get lost in the content there. And if anyone has the DBT skills training handouts or worksheets, you can find this on Mindfulness Handout 4. Okay, with that all being said, let's jump right back into our conversation. So when we look at this observing, so it's the opposite of multitasking, brings us into the current moment. And how we do so is by looking at these different bullet points. So noticing body sensations, so paying attention, observing what's happening internally for us. So using our senses as an anchor, like something to attend to, like what is it that I'm feeling in my body? What am I hearing right now? Can I smell, taste? What does it feel like to be moving? Could be another one. We talked about this a little bit last time of paying attention on purpose to the present moment. So if I notice that my mind is elsewhere, if I bring myself back in, like what's happening in this room right now? Who am I talking with? What do they look like? Paying attention to the external is another way of doing that also. And then there's a couple different concepts here. So it's not listed on here, but it's like I might like to make a little edit or kind of add this to your notes as something to practice. And one of the concepts is beginner's mind. So people might be familiar with this for, I think it shows up in a variety of different practices, but essentially it's like meeting each moment as if you were seeing it for the first time or as if you were doing it for the first time. And it's meant to kind of, again, introduce that concept of novelty and then see how does that change how we participate or how we even observe it to start with. And so like a classic example that I like to give is, here's a set of keys. So for me, I'm like, grab my keys. They unlock the door, right? If you were to give this set of keys, let's say to like a baby or like a toddler, like what might they do with these keys?
Yeah. It would just be like what? And putting it in our mouths and like feeling the textures and noticing all the different details and stuff, they would be fully in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like really looking at it again, like putting it in their mouth, maybe dropping it, watching that you pick it up, and then they find this like new game that they can play with it. So they're really like exploring it, which essentially is, I think about that beginner's mind is like using observing as a way of exploring something. So like new eyes, like meeting this moment with new eyes. And I love this concept because you can do it at any moment. Next, you're sitting here right now listening to this, taking your environment with new eyes. Like really scan, look around, look at the textures, look at the colors, listen to the sounds. Even if your environment is exactly the same and you're not noticing anything new, what might be different is how you're feeling too. So we can observe we can observe internally and also the external. And even if it just slows us down and makes us think, well, is there something here? Or what haven't I noticed before? That's great, right? It's like riveting us back into the moment and we're more present. Like the quality of our awareness is higher in this moment.
Definitely.
Does that make sense?
Like, yeah, it does. And it feels like what you're getting at is it's almost like there's an underlying sense of curiosity, or what a lot of like leaders might recognize as kind of like a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset.
Yes.
The way that this like showed up for me very practically. I love beginner's mind because one, I'm a recovering know-it-all, as you know, and two is a little like, especially in my relationships with people, I like to just remind myself sometimes that like they're different today than they were yesterday. Like I wonder what's different.
Yeah.
And it's really fun just to be like, what do I notice that's different?
Yeah. We do this. This is something that we do in couples work, but this would be applicable for anywhere. Is essentially what you just described. When you meet someone new, think about the last time you just formed like a new acquaintance. Maybe you're starting to spend more time together, or you were dating someone or someone new on your team. Like you're really curious to know about that person. You ask lots of questions and you want to know about their weekend. You want to know about their day. You want to know like things about them. And then over time, and especially for people that we're familiar with, we really lose that. Because like, oh, I formulate this sense of who this person is, and then I just operate with them. And so you can think about any partnerships, right? We just do that. And then we're in this mode of operating with each other, but we're not really observing each other. So that practice is like, really notice that person in front of you. Like, what do they look like? Depending on the context, and maybe this workplace example, like, what do they smell like?
That applies in the workplace too.
Like really just being curious. Right?
Yes.
And I love it. Like, what are they curious about right now? Like, what's going on in their world? And again, questions and prompts that we can do that brings us back into observing and taking in new information, based or different, which is different than just operating on this sense of like, I already kind of know you. I don't have to like really pay attention. And we probably have all lived out an experience when we've felt that on the receiving end, or if someone's like with us, but they're not really with us, or they don't really know us, and how that changes the quality of our relationship.
Totally.
Human, right?
And I really like that you're just saying that the quality of your presence changes when you do this beginner's mind.
Yeah.
Practice beginner's mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, for practices, you can practice this with other people, you can practice this with yourself. I really encourage it with any task that you do often. The next time you go to do that task, see if you can bring like, what is it like to really observe what I'm doing right now? I think it's one of those things that sounds so simple and it's hard. Like very dialectical, right? It's simple and it's hard. Or there's lots of things that can take us away from this. So we observe so we can get this info into our brains, get new information to then work with. Or so that way then we can do something different. So if something's not working well, we go into observing mode. We try to meet it with beginner's mind, and then we create meaningful change or steps to move out of it. So I think of like organizations, right? Or organizational flow. If something's not working, we have to come back into that beginner's mind in order to make really effective change and to move out of it. So it's a tool we're all familiar with. again, and it can be hard.
Yeah. I think a phrase I heard that I like to think about for that, especially in an organization, is sort of like you connect first with the person you're going to work something out with, connect, and then correct, right? So it's, hey, connect, like curiosity, like I'm noticing this thing. Can you help me understand? Right.
Yeah.
And then like, what would you prefer to see differently? Right. As
Nice.
a leader. And then let's go over that together and make a plan together, you know?
Yeah. I like that. And what's coming to my mind right now is when you think about like what makes us hard, or like, I'm thinking about that example, is oftentimes when we like see the problem, we then go right into the why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe our way of fixing it overlooks this other person who's involved in their role, or what they may want, or what their idea may be.
Mm-hmm.
That like kind of narrative or kind of going into the why can often be something that we have to pause.
Yeah.
So that's part of the describing. So this is why these are two separate skills.
Mm-hmm.
First, to get a lot of information, and then we put words on what we're experiencing. So again, this is like really slowing it down and really stepping out of that autopilot, which is not like autopilot in a bad way, but just what our brains do is we often observe and we immediately describe, we immediately put labels on it. And again, that's not like nothing's wrong with your brain for doing that. All of our brains do that. We're just wired that way. And they're two distinct things we're trying to do here. So going into describe, so similar to what I just said. So we really take in the information and then we start putting words on what we're observing. And so this would be the kind of key points here is that they're descriptive words. So we're describing. So this would be like, the who, the what, the when, the where. If you're labeling, the second bullet point here, it says label what you observe. So if you're noticing a feeling, we can name that feeling. I'm noticing feeling this. If you're having a thought, you can say I'm having the thought. And this is a whole nother skill set, but just for a moment, just hang out there for a second with this idea of describing your thoughts. So right now, if I'm having the thought that, this is going to be terrible, this is just not going to work, whatever it is that may be doing, that just feels like a truth. It's kind of like, this is going to be terrible, this is not going to work, period. Versus I'm noticing the thought that this is terrible and this is not going to work. Again, like maybe say it back to yourself internally, or maybe you have another phrase that's going on in your mind right now, and just see how it feels a little bit different, right? One is like a truth, and one is, I'm just noticing this thought. We'll come back. Well, we'll spend a whole skill on that. A whole skill day on that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power there in just labeling what we're observing. And it gives us an opportunity to unglue, like this third part where it says kind of like create some space between our interpretations or our opinions and what are the facts of the situation. Or I like to think about it as like it brings me back into what are the facts of the situation. Because again, like our interpretations and our opinions will go off and running. And then that may elicit different emotions or different feelings than what's actually observed. Like the actual facts of the situation is different than what we interpret. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So like, it's sort of like observing it as if like a video camera recorded it, right? Like objectively, yes. What happened, what unfolded on camera, and then yes. Internally, what happened. Like, yeah. I felt really confronted by that. I was really irritated, or I was really sad, or,
Yeah.
This internal resistance that you experience. I don't know. Pick a thing.
Yeah.
Difference. Yeah.
Like a classic example, or maybe like a very relatable example. Let's say you send an important email to someone off. And especially nowadays, we just expect things so rapidly, right, to come back to us. Let's say you send an email, let's say it's like on a Friday, and then you're coming back into work, maybe it's Monday, and you still haven't gotten a response. So depending on the context here and who you send it to, we could all have a variety of different responses right now. But generally speaking, we might feel frustrated. We might be annoyed that this person hasn't responded. Maybe we start to interpret that they don't find it important, or maybe they think that what I asked was stupid, or they don't respect me. All of that is interpretations. And if we come back just to the facts are, I sent an email on Friday at noon. It's Monday, 8 a.m., and I haven't received a response. Different, right? Still, still doesn't get me what I want. I wanted an answer. I want to need this thing to move forward. And is that different when we check the facts? We look at the facts of what happened. Is that different than all this extra noise that can come with our interpretations of what we're putting on it?
Yeah, makes an awful lot of sense.
So this last bullet point here says, remember, if you can't observe it through your senses, you can't describe it. So if we haven't observed it, then we can't accurately describe it. So I can't observe that this person doesn't respect me. I can observe that their email is late. Yeah. Later than what I had hoped to receive it by. Just sticking with that example.
Yeah. Yeah. The facts of the situation, right? Objectively as they happened, and then like that's separate from your interpretation of it, or what it brings up for you.
So
like I feel disrespected, right? Yes, not that they don't respect me versus they just haven't responded to an email.
So going back to the idea of this is simple and hard, this part right here of seeing what our automatic response is, or just seeing where we go internally, and then creating that pause and coming back to what we observed. This is a skill that I feel like we can spend a lot of time really building mastery at. And once we get really familiar with the skill, we're not like, oh, we're done. We just describe, we're just staying in describe land. It's something we have to constantly come back to, or something like emotionally like really grips us, or we get like, that emotion mind comes in and really goes off and running with our interpretations. We got to check that. So I think this is one that people can spend a long time practicing. And even once you master it, there can be things that pull us out of really describing, separating from her, kind of slowing it down, so to speak.
Makes sense.
Okay, so putting that together, we start with observing. So we take in information, we put words on it, and then we can participate. So how is it that I want to respond? How is it that I want to be in this moment? What does that look like? And we can probably all think about what it looks like if we just jump right into participating without observing and describing. There's lots of different examples for this out there. A classic one that I like to share, offer to people, is one time I was at a wedding, and it was like right after the ceremony, and like when like the bridesmaids and the groomsmen come in, they do like introductions. Well, they had choreographed a dance. And so there's like a dance going on. There's a lot of people on the stage, but it's just the bridesmaids and the groomsmen. And a friend of mine was late to the wedding and had showed up like right around like kind of like a couple minutes into the dance segment. And like I can, from an outsider's perspective, it just looks like people are dancing, right? There's like people at the bar, there's people walking around. And he just walked right in, was like I'm here, just starts going with it. And then it's like realized there's like, oh, this is like a set sequence. Like I shouldn't be on here. And the moment when he realized it and like slowly exited the stage. Oh yeah, I just jumped right into participating. I didn't really fully take in the landscape.
That's magical.
And that's a real life example. And a friend of mine, great example. He gave permission for me to share that story. I mean, you mentioned that, parenting, there's lots of parenting examples where we see our kids do this a lot. Like they do, they're friends are running and jumping and they just like run and jump, but then they forgot to look if there's rocks below them or if there's, what, I don't know, a structure in their way. They just went right into participating. They skipped over the observing and describing part. So when it comes to participating, so here's some, if we look at the bullet points here, there's some concepts here. It says to, throw yourself completely into activities of the current moment. So we took in all this information, now we see it, and now we are going to participate fully in it. Says, do not separate yourself from what is going on in the moment. So like if you're dancing, really be dancing. Like my friend, he was really dancing, he threw himself in, right? If you're cleaning, like just clean. Like if you're washing the dish, just wash the dish. If you're talking to a friend, just talk with your friend. And again, seemingly simple, or like, oh yeah, I already do that. Do you have your phone nearby? Have you checked your phone while your friend's talking? I know for myself, I really pay attention to my environment. And so I'm always scanning my environment for like, is the music right? Can I change the lighting right now? Can I make it a little bit more better? Can everyone's drinks full? What do people need? I'm always like kind of assessing, and like that really can take me out of just being with someone and just talking. And we can think about in work culture, right? Maybe we still have Slack up and we're talking to someone on the phone and like an email's coming in and we're like just trying to look at it. But all of that's really taking us out of like participating fully in that moment and like really being present with it. So there's this idea here of just like becoming one with whatever it is that you're doing. And again, that takes like a concerted effort of noticing when we're getting pulled out of it. So I'm here to give this person my full attention during this 15-minute phone call. And, oh, I hear that. I just saw an email come in. Oh, I really want to look at it. Okay, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to come back and just stay in it. And then I'm going to get to it later. And that's huge. That's what we call urge surfing. So you notice an urge to do something else and you're surfing that urge. You're kind of letting that urge come and go. And that's ultimately, again, really powerful. We'll have more of a sense of control of ourselves if we can do that behaviorally and if we can just do that with our attention.
Such a great term.
That's right. Is that resonating? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you noticing?
I don't know, just like growing up in the ocean also, it just really lands because you are, just if you notice it and let it subside, it's like, okay, still staying present.
Yeah, we're here. We're back. I got pulled. I'm coming back. Yep.
One of my direct reports just stepped into my office, is talking to me about something really important, and then I can hear out on the floor that somebody else is having a problem that they need help with, but I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna stay with this person who's in front of me right now. Yeah. Like, yeah.
So this third bullet point where it says act intuitively from Wise Mind, what I want to speak to here is that this is something that comes with a lot of practice and repetition. So I love if you've ever watched the Olympics, I'm just going to pick a category. Let's just say you were watching gymnastics. A lot of professional athletes will talk about when they are doing that final race or they're showcasing their skills in that moment, that they're really just acting intuitively. Like they have practiced this over and over and over and over again. They know the foundation, and then they just kind of let themselves be in the moment and go with it. Like they know what comes next. They're going to anticipate it and they can just fully be present, which is really different than like when you're first learning the foundations of, let's say, that set sequence where you're like, okay, I'm going to run. I'm not a gymnastics person, so I'm going to botch this, but I'm going to run, then I'm going to do the vault, and then I'm going to do a backflip, and then I'm going to do this thing. Like they don't have to keep thinking about that. They just start doing it. So I say that to say, when you think about this, what does this mean of acting intuitively? Is that it's something that comes over time and something that requires also often a lot of preparation. So there's a foundation of skillfulness that then allows us to act intuitively and trust that we can do that. Does that register?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because it just like learning any new behavior, right? First, it's just becoming aware of like how you've been historically, right? Or what it is that's occurring now. and then just kind of being like intentional about how do you want it to be different. Then it's like, okay, how can I take steps towards that? And then practicing that. And then ultimately it will become rote, but it doesn't start out that way. It takes an awful lot of like focus and consistency to like really do the thing you want to do, versus just, autopiloting your way through an old way of being. So,
yeah. And so this concept here is, we say like, it's like, this is like a fundamental characteristic of skillful behavior is doing what's just needed in each situation. And so a question that often comes up here is, well, like, what does that look like? Or how do you kind of define what's needed in each situation? So sometimes this might be, and there's, we're going to come to this as a skill of effectively or being effective. We can also ask ourselves, like, what's our goal in this current moment? So I love this one for like working with teams. What's our goal in this situation, and how does that help guide us in this moment to do what's needed in this situation? So if we're trying to problem solve this one thing, how do we stay focused on that task? Because other things are going to come up that are going to pull us in different directions. How do we come back to it? So asking ourselves, like, what's our goal in the moment? What is needed in this situation? Then helps guide this like more skillful participation or way of being. And again, this just like takes patience and practice. So there's a lot of training behind here. Other thing that I'll say here is I also will ask people, like, what's accessible in this moment? So like doing what's needed in each situation, like maybe I have a really big goal, maybe it's really lofty, but is there any portion of that feels accessible right now? Where can I practice this?
And so sort of like just
doable today.
Right, exactly. If I can't make the dream scenario all happen right now, it is a super lofty goal. What feels actually realistic or achievable right now? Yeah, makes sense.
So that is the what skills.
Cool. Observe, describe, participate. I have the handbook over here. That's what I'm looking at. So yeah, very cool.
And then for practice or for leaving here, and we'll do the house skills, or for anyone listening, when you walk through these different categories, you may have maybe thought or heard that, or this about yourself, like, I feel like I'm pretty confident in like my ability to observe, like, feel like that's like a strong suit of mine. Where I get lost maybe is that describing part, like really just staying with the facts. Like it's hard for me to get out of my interpretations. Like, okay, that would be your practice ground, right? Like really focus in on like building like the muscle strength of that describe skill, or like, oh, I can do the observing, describing, but sometimes when I'm participating, it's really hard to like fully be present. So like what gets in the way there? Or like what's one thing you could do today that feels like, but again, like accessible to feel like you can fully be into something? Like where can you practice that? What does that look like? And asking yourself those questions so we can pull out each section and like really work on just strengthening that skill set there. Or we can work on all of them.
That's true. But I think that's a good tactic just to really honor what's true to you, right? Where do you feel like you need or you could benefit from some focus, right? Whether it's on observing or describing or participating. I know for me, I feel like I'm in the participating bucket lately, where I've just been asking myself, like, what's most important to me right now? In terms of like how I show up for whatever's in front of me. It's like coaching. I really want my person to feel like my full presence and attention with them, that I'm not pulled away from whatever is most critical for them, that we're working on, or, with family or something like that. It's like, I really want to be present and to not be distracted when we have these moments of where we're all together, like just really soak that in,
Yeah.
That's kind of like another way of asking someone what my intention is. So yeah.
Yeah. Just gonna say that's a really good segue into the next question. because I love that framing. And I think for yourself, like participating fully, like here's my intention, here's what I'm coming in with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we probably have all of that experience that then we're in the moment and maybe it's different than how we want it to be. Or maybe the moment is chaotic and scattered and I really was coming in with bringing my full presence to it. So maybe that's creating discomfort, or maybe that's not, again, like not how I want it to be. And so how do we hold that and be with that, like in a mindful way? And that's a great segue into the house skills.
I love it.
Because where we start with the house skills is talking about being non-judgmental or holding a non-judgmental stance. So I might have just said those words and people may already be eye rolling or like internal responses to the idea of non-judgment. So I just want to say to start with, the goal here is not to rid ourselves of judgments. I've yet to meet a person that can do that. Maybe that's a bot in some form, but judgments are everywhere. They're a part of our language. They're not inherently good nor bad. The little reframe of thinking about judgments is, I like to say that judgments are like shorthand for describing. So like judgments can like save us time, so to speak. So if you say like, okay, let's say you went to a concert, pick a concert, any concert, and we were talking about it afterwards, and I said, like, oh my gosh, like how was the concert? And you said, oh, it was the worst. It was bad. It's terrible. Okay, like all judgments, right? What could that mean? Or let's flip the script. Let's just tell you, I'm telling you this, this example. It's like, oh, the concert was awful. It's terrible. What could I be describing?
Oh, maybe it was the performance itself, like was totally lackluster to you, or maybe it was awful because of the seat that you were in. You like couldn't see the stage, or there was somebody near you that smelled really bad, or like people who were singing at the top of their lungs the entire time when all you wanted to do was to hear the musician sing, not them, like maybe you had a headache.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it rained.
Yeah.
Maybe the bathrooms were far away, or maybe they didn't have bathrooms, or
there's rain delays and you didn't get home until like 3 hours after you
maybe
thought you
the
would have a
artist,
school night.
I'm not naming any names, maybe the artist came on an hour and a half later than they're supposed to. That was annoying. Like couldn't see the whole thing. Maybe that's why it was bad. Right, so bad is a judgment word, but it's shorthand for a much longer description. So sometimes we can use judgments really effectively and it just saves us time and we don't have to go in the description. And where we can get like the trap of judgments is where you may assume that we're on the same page about something, but really we are talking about totally different things. Does that make sense? And hopefully that's relating to everyone because we've all been there, right? Like,
yes, we have.
And it can work in both. It can work in both directions where there can be positive judgments, like that was the best thing ever, or like I love this thing. Well, why did you love that thing? What about it makes it the best thing? You go and look at a piece of art with someone, you guys can both really appreciate it and say that was awesome, but like it for totally different reasons. So that description, we can get more information out of. So judgments, again, like shorthand for more description. If we find we're falling into that trap of really, we actually don't know what we're talking about, then the antidote is to describe it or to ask for more information. Oh, what about it made it the worst concert ever? Or what about that thing do you really like? So a little cue that I like to tell people is like when you think about, so a judgment shows up, like a little decision tree here could be, is this judgment effective or is this judgment ineffective to like hold or to keep? So like effective, maybe it saved us time. I have like, when I have enough information I need, then we're kind of on with it. Ineffective, a typical cue for me is that it has a negative impact on my mood. So let's say, if you've ever been around someone that has lots of judgments, Or maybe yourself, you've been in a moment of having lots of judgments. Oh, imagine that human experience, right? And you're just in a moment of like really judging the thing or judging something. And we usually feel it. We're like, ugh, doesn't feel good. Or if you've ever walked into a room and you've felt like there's lots of judgments, perceived judgments of yourself, you can kind of feel that. That's kind of what I'm talking about, like where it impacts our mood. Maybe I'm getting like really angry, I'm getting really frustrated, or like really working myself up. Oh yeah, because there's lots of judgments going on in this moment. Okay, those would be the ones that I would look at and say, can I work with those? So I'm getting like really worked up. I'm thinking this is the worst person ever. They're not respecting me. They don't care about my time. Blah, 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 blah. Like all these, they're bad. They're awful. All those judgments. I'm really feeling it. That's my cue to then unpack it, try to describe it more. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we're not on the same page, or if it's like impacting our mood, I say those are usually times like to give the antidote, like go back into describing, try to unpack the judgment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. What are you thinking? Or what's...
Well, I guess again, through the lens of the workplace, I think this is a really common pickle to get into as a manager. Like say you're having your one-on-one with one of your direct reports, and you know that there's something really critical to talk through, right? And so you just like, you start off the one-on-one, like, how are you? Like, how's your week been so far?
Yeah.
They're like, Jesus, it's been exhausting or whatever. And you're just like, oh, okay. And then you have this moment in front of you where like the decision tree is, do I honor this like moment of like where it feels like that heaviness kind of set in, right? Or there's some sort of like the mood impact, and like go down that path for a bit and still remember that I got to come back to this other thing I got to talk to this person about. Like, can I do both, or do I not touch it and just stick with this thing? Like that's a very common push-pull that comes up a lot. Totally. Like, I know I used to default into like, well, I'll go down this pathway, and sometimes I would lose track of the other thing that I needed to talk about that was actually really critical. I was so invested in making sure my person was okay, or figuring out what else was more critical in that moment, So, but I do think that cue is super helpful, because outside of the workplace, I definitely experienced that for myself too. And I'll catch myself in like a thought spiral, or I'll feel the spiral happening downward. Yeah. And it's like, oh wait, hold on. Noticing the spiral, what's causing that? And usually it is some sort of judgment that either I'm making or that I feel I'm on the receiving end of. And then usually I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do I know that that's actually true? Objectively true?
Yeah.
No, gonna go try to shake that off.
You look at the last two bullet points, basically is what you just said. This is such nice segues today for all this content.
Look at us go.
But the last two, so it says, acknowledge your values, your wishes, your emotional reactions, but don't judge them. So what just came up for me when you're sharing that example, right, is we start going down like, we notice having that reaction, and we're going down like this little spiral. They're like, oh, like you're judging yourself or you're judging that person. And if you unpack it, like you're saying, I came into this with an idea where we're going, and we've gotten diverted because other things showed up. So underneath that is like either like a value or a wish for things to be different, or a wish for something to move a certain way. And that's not wrong. That's not bad. So it's valid to want those things, or to have that wish or that desire. And we got distracted, right? We got pulled to other content. Maybe it's more effective to just go with that content. Maybe it's effective to name that in the moment. Like, I want to give this time, and we got to come back to this other thing. So it all becomes workable. But where we can get really stuck, or where we can get very emotionally reactive, is when all those judgments are present. Now I'm judging myself. And like, now we're just like, judging. And what we know that does internally is it makes us really cognitively inflexible. So the higher presence of judgments, the less cognitively flexible we are, because judgments are activating. So I'm having lots of judgments in this moment. I get that like tunnel vision about why that person's wrong and why I'm right. And that is cognitively inflexible. That tunnel, anytime, if you're in a tunnel, if you find yourself in a tunnel, that's your cue to try to span out before moving forward.
Oh, I love that so much. Because what you just said is like, I see this all the time in myself and in the leaders that I work with, is that a lot of the times I know someone feels like they've been backed into a corner or some way, or they have a lot of judgment that's happening because they get into this binary of it's either this or it's that.
Yes.
Right. Kind of like you're saying, in a tunnel, you can either go forward or go back. There's no other option. Right. Yeah. And so a lot of the times, like I find that's a powerful cue just to be like, oh, what's going on? Just noticing. Right. And might there be other gray area options that have not yet been explored, you know?
Yes. What would that look like? So, well, again, just kind of like thinking this out loud, or when I'm hearing myself say this skill right now, again, I can imagine someone listening to this and be like, doesn't that take a lot of time? Or I don't have time to do that. And again, I think it will require slowing things down and doing things differently to really build mastery at this skill. And then over time, it's going to become the new familiar. So this process will become more efficient, time efficient. And in the beginning, it probably will require slowing things down. This is a great one to like write out. The practice of writing out your judgments and then trying to break down the describe or trying to break down the facts. Great practice. You can do it anywhere. No one has to know that you're doing it. You can do it internally. And again, if we have, or maybe I haven't said this, so maybe it's not end again, but this is where like I think values are so important. Like if I really value how I'm showing up for people or how I want to lead or how I want to engage in situations, why, like what's my why for doing something different? Like, and I know that judgments shut me down, or I know I get really frustrated with my team and I start judging them and then now I'm not effective. Or I just get angry and that's what people are left with and then nothing gets done or things get stuck in the way. Like if those judgments are a part of that process, here's something that we can do, try to unpack and then move from being a place of effective versus just doing things kind of automatically or just from that reactive state. So don't judge the judging. And when your judgments pop up, as they will, you don't then have to judge yourself for having the judgments. Like judgments are going to be there. They're not either inherently good nor bad. The question is whether it's effective or ineffective to keep going with those judgments. Like, how does that change my behavior? Is it in line with my goals? What's my values? These are all these other framing questions that then might move us back into describing or back into focusing on being effective. So I don't think I said this at the beginning. House skills, you don't have to do these in order. Like they don't build off of each other. You can like plug these in at any time. And we can do them in conjunction with the what skills, and they're their own things. We talked about this a little bit of being one mindful when we talked about participating. So becoming one with whatever you're doing. So here's like that skill, but just expand it. So this is the skill of being one mindful. This is not a DBT specific skill. This is like just a practice, a mindfulness practice that's out there. And we've talked about it already in a couple different times of how do you help. What is it that feels accessible? What's something that you can do in this moment that helps you bring more presence or helps increase the quality of your awareness in this moment? How do you really rivet yourself to the here and now? So we talked about introducing novelty. The very beginning, we had that little caricature. We looked at like looking in the future, looking in the past, right? Like both those things don't exist in this moment. All it is like right here. So coming in contact with us by letting go of distractions or concentrating our mind is all the practice of being one mindful. So there's a gajillion ways to practicing this, anything from being one mindful in this moment, being one mindful when you're washing a dish. I think John Kabat-Zinn is famous for saying this example of the next time you're in a shower, ask yourself if you're in the shower. Say that again. Next time you're in the shower, ask yourself if you're in the shower, because where else could we be? oh, have you ever planned a meeting in the shower? Have you ever thought about the argument that you got in last night, or what you're going to have for breakfast, or what you're doing later that day, or what needs to get done, right? There's so many things that can take us out of it. So again, using our senses, using that observing can be something that pulls us back into the moment. And then another concept here for just helping us kind of get into being one mindful. There's two concepts. One is an opening the mind or focusing the mind. So yesterday I was at an aquarium with my kids, and if anyone's ever been to an aquarium, see if you can just go and kind of go there visually for a moment. Let's all go to the Monterey Aquarium together. Beautiful, right? Say we're at an aquarium, we're looking at a really big, like live observation window. So an open mind would be the practice of standing in front of that window, standing in front of that tank and taking it all in, like noticing the kelp and the fishes moving and the bubbles and the different colors and the way the light's coming in, and just seeing our attention kind of flow and kind of go all over. But the essence is that we're being mindful. We're taking in just what's in front of us, but we're kind of taking it all in. A focused mind would be you find one fish in the tank and you follow that fish and you don't lose sight of it. Where is that fish going? Right? Like, okay, it's going over here, it's going over there. So I'm using this as we're in an aquarium, but now come out of that aquarium, come into your life. We can do that anytime. So right now I'm really focused mind. My focused mind is on this moment, on this task. And maybe if I was to open mind, do that practice, I can take in more of my environment, like looking around me, taking in information. I like to name that because I think this is a really useful tool that sometimes when we get really into focus mind, we can start getting overwhelmed, or we can start becoming like it's almost like ineffective to be in focus mind. Something's happening there that's not working, or we're becoming distressed. So the answer is to pull out and to do open mind. So if I'm getting tunnel vision, can I pull out and take in more information? Can I do the open mind practice? So a different way of coming in contact with the present moment, but it just kind of pulls us out of just that hyper focus. Or vice versa, I'm really taking everything in, and that's freaking me out. Like I'm getting really overwhelmed, or it's like too much sensory information. Okay, I'm just going to focus on this one thing. Keep your eye on the prize, right? Like just focusing on this one thing. And that actually helps to reorient me. So I don't know what examples would just come up in your mind, but anyone listening, we can probably all imagine we've probably all done this, but now we're just putting words on it. So again, knowing yourself, you can play with that and play with like more, okay, I'm going to do an open mind activity right now, like with all these people around me or whatever it is that you're doing, or just naming it. Well, I'm really in focus mind right now. So different tools and ways of kind of accessing this skill.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard it described that way before, but it definitely resonates for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're just constantly oscillating between those things. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about like last time I was like at a dinner party and there was a lot of us around. It was like at any given moment, like you're kind of taking in the entirety of the situation, and then you're just talking to one person, you have your full attention, then your attention gets pulled and then you're taking in something else, right? Like we're just kind of constantly ebbing and flowing. And so I think it's just important to name that if you find yourself in more of that open mind stance, that's not being mindful. We're just taking everything, just a different way of framing it. Mm-hmm. So similar question here or a question to pose for yourself here would be, what gets in the way of me doing this? What gets in the way of me just eating when I eat? Or when I'm walking, just walk? Or when was the last time you went for a walk and you just walked? You'll notice on here, the third bullet point, it says, when you are worrying, worry. This is a common one that people ask questions about. And this is actually an intervention that we use in like behavioral therapies. So it's the idea that like, worries on your mind, or when you're feeling anxious about something, what's like a common thing that people will tell you to do is like, oh, just don't worry about it. Just don't think about it. It's like, well, one, that doesn't work. But if I tell you right now to not think about a pink elephant, probably just thought about a pink elephant, right? So there's this like paradoxical like kind of trap here that when we tell ourselves not to do something, we do it, it's going to keep coming up. And so worrying is one of those things that we're constantly just trying to push away, but then we get more of it. It goes unresolved. So it sounds counterintuitive, but the practice here would be, okay, this thing's on my mind. Actually, I'm going to set a timer for the next 5 minutes. I'm just going to worry. I'm going to write it all out. I'm going to say it out loud. Whatever your practice is, I'm just going to spend this time really devoted to this worry. And then when that timer's up, okay, that's a wrap. And it doesn't always just like end the worry. But if we put this as a practice, we can say once I'm out of that worry time, every time that worry keeps coming back up, we can say, hey, I got to that already. Remember, I wrote everything out, got to the bottom of that one. Or I'm going to come back to this later. I'll get to that when I come into my worry time. So it's kind of like gives your brain a little place to put it. And we're giving it our full attention versus just letting it wander and be there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it feels like it's a way of like not looking at the list again, where it feels like it's like, don't judge it. It's just like, if that's what you need, you're noticing that worrying is present. Like, how can you honor that and just allow yourself to really just go with it for 5 minutes or whatever? Mm-hmm. Like I used to think about this with like moping. If I was really sad about something, I'd always try not to mope, you know? And then I was like, you know what? What if I just like let myself have a spectacular mope for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right. Just mope it out hard, you know? It helps so much. And the worrying too. Like, okay, well, let's just like really look at the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then the same are true for the last 2 bullet points on there. Like when you're planning, plan, or like when you're remembering, remember. So again, going back to that little character who's like getting pulled out of the present moment by going into the past or like remembering something. Again, if we kind of find ourselves doing that, it's different if I can say, like, I'm doing this with intention. Like I'm going to purposely just let my mind wander. I'm just going to see where it goes, or I'm purposely recalling this event because I want to learn something, or I want to revisit it because it was lovely. Like I'm purposely choosing to do that versus my mind is just going there and I have no control over it. So it's a seemingly small shift, but really powerful one. It feels different. Mm-hmm. So my challenge for everyone is that practice of concentrating your mind. Anytime next time you find yourself doing more than one thing at a time, stop. Just name it, and then can carry on. Or can you give your full attention to one task, finish it, then move to the next, and move to the next, and carry on. Okay, so last but not least on here, it says it's the skill of effectively, or like say just being effective. A little bit similar to participator. We talked about this a little bit in participating, but the idea here is, what does it look like to be effective in this moment? And what tools or what skills do I need to then accomplish that? So in order to be effective, we have to know what our goal is. So identifying your goal, or again, like if you have a value and kind of pulling out some goals from that. And then focusing on what works is different than just trying to like push through something, or like white knuckling through something, or just doing something out of like root behavior or like automatic behavior. Like what is going to be like the effective way to get to my goal, ultimate goal? So you can, lots of different examples here. Couple different thoughts here. It says play by the rules and act as skillfully as you can. So I'm just going to give a classic example. We can swap this one out for different examples. But let's just say that you and I were going to play a game of poker, multi-hand game. Okay. And I deal out some cards. And if your goal is to win the game, and you look at your cards, and you're like, wow, the cards are awful, and you fold, you just establish that you're not going to win the game. So the skill of being effective, and if you ask like card players, like really good card players, they say it's not the cards that you get, it's how you play them. So again, take this metaphor and apply it to life. But so what's the rules of the game? How do I know the rules? Act as skillfully as I can. How do I best play the cards that I have, cards that I'm dealt? And what looks effective, or what is effective? So instead of folding, could I have placed a bet? Could I have checked? What are my options for responding, and how do I work with that? This one, I would say, is like one of those skills where it sounds straightforward and people are like, oh yeah, I've got that. And then when we go to put it into practice, there's so many things that take us out of being effective. The need to be right is often a common one. the wanting to prove a point, righteous anger, like there's all sorts of things that can pull us out of being effective. And oftentimes, a lot of times, it's that emotion mind hook. Right? Like something about this is like, I want to do it this way, even though I know that way is not going to work, or it's not going to work for my team, or like people aren't going to respond to this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Here we go. So it requires willingness to act like skillfully, to do something different. Again, that having a goal in mind is so important, because I think it keeps us tethered to the skill. Without that goal in mind, it's kind of, what's the point? Like, just do whatever, blow it up, figure it out later. I'm thinking what just came to my mind is like, there's more skills here that I think really play a role in helping us be effective that we'll come to later, like more distress tolerance, like even emotion regulation skills. But for a starter point, what would be effective? What are the tools that I have to help me get there? Like, kind of what are the rules? And what's accessible? Like, what feels accessible today, or accessible in this moment? If we can start there, that's a great, like, kind of launching off point of trying to be more effective in our spaces.
Heck yeah.
Okay, that's the how skills.
Woo, what and how. Just in time too. Well done.
There is a ton of content here. And again, like if you're thinking about going and practicing them, I always tell people, like, try all these on for size. And if there's one that you kind of know, like, ooh, yeah, I've been like very judgmental lately, there's been a lot of judgments, like I'm going to just focus on non-judgmentally, that's a great inroad. Like, just start somewhere, right? Or like, oh, I'm going to practice that one mindful, and maybe practice it with just pleasant things, or things that you really enjoy. So it doesn't feel too painstaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's a good note to end on too, because ultimately what you're trying to do with this, I think, is to grow the tools that you have in your toolkit, and I think the point is not to try to master it all at once, but just pay attention to where it feels the most resonant for you, right? And honor that, and then work on that, play with it, and see where that takes you.
Do it in different environments.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Okay, what and how skills? Any questions?
No, I really, I'm excited to practice some of this. I took some good notes for myself. Like that's just, yeah, it's all very practically helpful.
Like with your practices. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks again for joining us today. If you like this episode, please share, follow, or like us on your favorite podcast app. Check us out on social at The Skills Podcast or On Point Practice, and check out our website at theonpointpractice.com. We'll catch you next time.